The Chiefs show up at the combine and every piece of news for the entire offseason occurs. We're going to break it down. Let's go.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
What's up, everybody? I'm Craig Stout. This is the KC Laboratory, brought to you by our day one partner, Emprise Bank, member FDIC. Maddie, I'm not going to dwell on this because there was so much news that came out today that we're not even going to talk about the Chiefs releasing stadium improvement rendering.
Ooh.
Something like we're going to wish we had this sort of information here in about like 3 months when there's nothing else going on. And we don't even have room for it today. Maddie Lane is joining me. Maddie, my friend, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. That's something that Kent Swanson, our usual host, doesn't do anymore, and it makes me deeply saddened. And Kent, as you can tell, is not here. He's okay. I want to make sure everyone knows he's okay. He's big on making sure that people aren't here are known to be okay. But he's not here because earlier in the week, we ran long. We went over an hour, and Hollywood said, nah, I've hit my weekly quota. I'm done. I'm not showing up later in the week. So it's just Craig and I. So you can go ahead and lock in for another hour plus show, as this always gets to. And especially you see on this beautiful graphic made by Tucker D. Franklin. D stands for graphics. We got a lot to talk about. We got some info. We got some stuff happening as the combine. Yeah, Kent's okay, Andrew.
Kent's okay. Thanks for checking, buddy. Really appreciate that super chat.
But yeah, no, we got some big news, so we should probably get into it pretty quick so we aren't here all night.
Yes, let's start with kind of the big one that came out today. Ian Rappaport has been all over this. Lots of stuff about the Chiefs meeting with L'Jarius Sneed, and a guy that we're about to talk about in our second segment here. Meeting with L'Jarius Sneed, they are prepared to use the tag, and they have given him permission to seek a trade. This absolutely screams this team has a certain line that they are willing to go to for L'Jarius Sneed, but they are not willing to go over it. And L'Jarius Sneed wants that kind of money that is over that mark. Like, I think that's the abridged version in my mind, Maddie, because there's no reason we should be hearing about all of this at this point unless they are just that far apart.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, but I think that's the big gist of it, right? Is the Chiefs, and this is the way they always negotiate. They say, hey, this is what our offer is. And then they also probably have a little bit higher, and that's like their max. And they're just not going to go above that. And it sounds reasonable. It sounds like every team probably does this, but I don't think every team in the NFL operates this way. I think the Chiefs have been very strict. The Chiefs are very kind of like calculated with the way it does, almost comes across as cold sometimes to some of the players, but they have a max limit and they're not going to go above it. They might have already given that max L'Jarius Sneed. They might be a little below, but it seems like the two sides are kind of far apart. And they're saying, okay, well, we're not that close right now. We really don't want to just sit here and negotiate this contract all the way up till the season. And I think the bigger news is it doesn't seem like they're too keen on playing him while on the franchise tag. So it doesn't feel like if there's no long-term deal that's made with L'Jarius Sneed, that they are okay just paying him $19 million for 1 year of service under the tag and keeping him all year on that. So instead, they're like, well, we might tag you. We plan on tagging you, but you can go look for a trade. And I think the whole goal is to just kind of get over the situation as quick as possible. If they can't agree to a long-term deal, it sounds like they want to just get out from the contract and recoup the best assets they can.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. And the fact that they have given him permission to seek a trade before the league has even kicked off. Like the season has not officially started yet. So that's one of those, it almost screams irreconcilable differences, because you look at the other guys that they have been negotiating with on the franchise tag. It's, Chris Jones, Orlando Brown Jr., guys like that, where it's like, yeah, we're going to get a deal done. We feel confident that we are going to be able to get something done. We want them here long-term. That's the entire narrative, even from the Ian Rappaports of the world. They may have been working stuff behind the scenes, seeing if there was interest in the league and all of that. But the public-facing perception was always, we want this individual here long-term, whether or not they actually did or not. This is far closer to like a D forward level thing where it's just like, hey, we're going to use the tag on you and feel free to find the best suitor for you. It really does feel like that. I have a lot of feelings about letting L'Jarius Sneed go. I'm going to try and keep those until, not try and expend energy on something that has not happened to date. But it is one of those that I am looking at very, very closely. I will be very sad if he goes. But the other part of this, cornerbacks have not netted a ton in trades
Oh.
lately. And so I see a lot of people that are like, okay, maybe we can get a late first for L'Jarius Sneed. It's like, man, that would be great. I think the Chiefs would do that immediately. People going, oh, a top 50 pick for L'Jarius Sneed. Again, I think they'd love that. But I am writing an article for the KCSN Substack tomorrow. Go and subscribe there. It's $30 a year, $5 a month. You should do the yearly one. Pays off in the end. But I am going through all of the cornerback trades since the CBA, since the new rookie wage scale CBA has kicked off, and talking about all of these different players, all of the different cornerbacks that have been traded for player for pick swaps. I'm going to give a little spoiler here. It's shockingly lower than you would expect. Like by a lot. It's shockingly lower. So I know that we're all looking at this like, hey, they're going to be able to replenish the cupboard. They're going to be able to use these picks on valuable players. I would pump the brakes a little bit on this. Good players have been traded for late day 2 picks or early day 3 picks way too often since the rookie wage scale started, Maddie.
Yeah, I don't want to burn like everything coming out in your article, so I'm not like too into the specifics, but like pretty much unless your name is Jalen Ramsey, you're not getting a big return as a cornerback in trades. And now there's some caveats there. We were talking about it before the show started. I've been kind of glancing through it as we're going here. Not a lot of good cornerbacks have also been traded, especially when they are kind of in their prime. So there is a little bit of like, there's a gray area here between most of the names that have been traded. There's a big gap, and then there's a Jalen Ramsey, right? And so it's figuring out where in this gap is L'Jarius Sneed going to fit, but there isn't a lot. There isn't a lot of precedent to look back on and say, oh, that's kind of the value that you think you should get for L'Jarius Sneed if you're looking at just cornerbacks. Now, I think you can also look into players traded on the franchise tag. There's a little bit, I don't even want to say bigger sample size, but guys that get franchise tagged are usually better players. You have some more like to like in terms of talent comparisons, I think, for L'Jarius Sneed. And some of the ones that kind of jump out to me to where I think are around and where L'Jarius Sneed's play is you have Yannick Ngakoue when he was traded from the Jaguars to the Vikings. You have D Ford traded from the Chiefs to the 49ers. Do I think Sneed is better than that? Yes, but he's pass rusher versus corner.
Pass rusher. Mm-hmm.
Frank Clark from the Seahawks to the Chiefs. Again, pass rusher to a corner, right? So like there's options for tag and trades that can get you into if you want to trick yourself into a first round value or a second round value. I think Yannick Ngakoue is kind of like the perfect middle ground that I have settled in, is like, that's the most likely talent to talent comparison. I think there's really highs there, but maybe not the complete player that you think of as like the best at that position in the NFL. He went for a second and a fourth at a more premium position when you look at how the NFL invests, and 3 years younger. And there wasn't a knee issue that held him out of practice for a lot of the year throughout the season leading up to the trade. There isn't shoulder surgery in his past at the time. So second and a 4 seems like the absolute highest end. And I'm not even thinking an early second. I'm thinking like a late second and a 4. And that seems like absolute best case scenario. I think like that's probably, your mind should not even entertain anything higher than that as of right now. I don't think.
Yeah, that's where I am as well. Obviously, I will be pleasantly surprised if that does end up being the case. It just brings up kind of the question, the return on investment, like, in my opinion, if you're getting like a late 3 for L'Jarius Sneed, I think he's more valuable to Kansas City next year. I think play him on the tag. Like, just play him on the tag. You're trying to 3-peat here. Go keep that guy around for another year. You love him. He fits so well with Steve Spagnuolo. It makes all the sense in the world. I'm also team pay Sneed too. So I'm very biased here, but it becomes diminishing returns with all of that. And I know that the Chiefs are probably going to go out and spend a little bit in free agency. I know that they're probably going to eat up any sort of compensatory pick from letting a guy walk this year. So by taking this year's third, you're basically, accelerating something that you weren't going to get anyway. But man, that would be a very tough pill to swallow for me personally. However, one of the things that Ian Rappaport also mentioned when talking about all this is, hey, if the Chiefs move on from L'Jarius Sneed, they're able to tag and trade him, that frees up more money for Chris Jones. Our guy, Matt Derrick, mentioned, it's like, he got his Q&As and stuff like that. He's going on. Good follow. Make sure you're out there following Matt Derrick. Mentioned that from what he's hearing, they want to get things done with both players. But Chris Jones is a lot closer to being in the same ballpark as the Kansas City Chiefs than L'Jarius Sneed. If they tag and trade L'Jarius Sneed, Matty, you and I have talked about this before during the regular season. This is not going to come as a surprise to anybody else. You can't let two blue chip defensive players walk. If you are tagging and trading L'Jarius Sneed, you almost have to sign Chris Jones, don't you?
I mean, yes, but also, again, as I led with, the Chiefs are going to have a number they're not going to go above. And we saw that number last year, right? It literally led to a guy holding out of a game and watching the team play from the stands. So if they trade Sneed, yes, I think they would want to bring Chris Jones back, but I also don't think that they're just going to be like, oh, here's an open wallet, take this or Nick Bosa money, take this better than I don't think that's the way they're going to operate regardless of what happens with Sneed. So it's good to hear that they're close. It sounds like a lot of what comes out is they're optimistic about it. The meeting with the Chris Jones agents after he sat out a game against the Lions was helpful for this process. Okay, sure, I guess. It seems like the two are at least entering this year on better terms than what it seems like they entered last year's negotiations as. The problem is, I think we've heard it. I think you've seen it when Brett Veach has started talking. You've heard it. They're not going to sit around and wait. And like this year, they don't have club control over Chris Jones. So like once March 11th hits, he's talking to other teams freely. Once March 13th hits, he can sign with any other team. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be sitting there, nothing in their hands with waiting for him to say yes to their contract offer either. So if they think they're going to lose Sneed, if they think he's as good as gone, they probably are going to try to get this ball rolling on Chris Jones really quick. Because, hey, guess what? It's about to be March.
Yeah.
You're really close to that point now. And so I don't know. I have weird vibes about the whole situation, not them bringing back Chris Jones. Like, I agree with that aspect of it. It's just all of the words that are coming out. It seems like they're trying really hard to publicly convince somebody that Chris Jones is their top priority, and they're trying publicly to convince somebody how badly they want him back in Kansas City. Maybe it's true, but it seems like a lot of lip service for something that technically can be solved without being public at all.
Absolutely the case. And the fact that it's playing out in the public eye, maybe it is something. And again, now I'm full speculation. We're not basing this off of reports
we'll get
anymore.
Real dark while we speculate.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I really appreciate that. I should have like a tinfoil hat to put on my head for Craig's conspiracy corner. But this just feels like something. Oh, thank you. Yeah,
I got you.
I think the way that Veach talked about it was very telling. It's like, yeah, I met with Chris after the week 1 game and we came to an agreement, and that's why we feel good about going into this year. It's I met with Chris, like the direct connection between those two. That's not to say that Chris wasn't talking to Brett Veach before, but I wonder if taking some agents out of the equation a little bit more and saying, you want to be here, we want you here, let's not do this thing where we both draw our lines in the sand and neither one of us budges all offseason again. That didn't do either one of us any good. You didn't make what you wanted to make last year. We paid something that we kind of had to get you back on the field. Neither one of us wants to do that. Let's iron this out right here and now. And let's make sure that we take care of this. And that makes me think that line that the Chiefs have drawn, because I do agree, Matty, I don't think that they're just going to pay whatever Chris Jones wants. I really, they've been so good about all of that. I understand that Chris Jones is a player worth breaking that for, but not necessarily somebody that they're going to just say, here's a blank check, go. I think that they have come close enough to the number that Chris and his agents want, and they are willing to say, hey, listen, man, we did you a solid here. We want you here. Let's just end this right now. You sign with Kansas City. You stay here. We're giving you all this public attention. We're letting everybody know in the media, we love you. We want you here. You need to be in Kansas City. We are even willing to tag and trade one of our other blue chips to make this happen for you, buddy. We are chasing you right now. We are not trying to let you come to us. We are chasing you. I look at that and I just say, this organization is trying to paint a very rosy picture for Chris to try and get him to get to the number that they've got on the table. And frankly, based on everything that everybody's saying that knows anything about Chris and the Chiefs and their dealings, I think a deal gets done. I maybe wouldn't have said that a few weeks ago. I really, truly believe a deal gets done based on the narrative around him, around everything that's going on right now. So I think Chris Jones is staying in Kansas City next year. And I think it's going to be at a big number. And I really hope that he bucks all of the over 30-year-old defensive tackle, narratives and all of that. We can get into that later. But I think he's in Kansas City. I think they're going to extend him, Maddie.
I mean, I just don't have a good. I think they want to. I think they would like to bring both guys back, but it comes back to it. It's at their price, and Chris Jones was not that interested at all in playing at their price last year. Maybe things have changed, right? Like or maybe Kansas City's decided to go up. Although I don't think after an extra year, the way things played out, I don't think Kansas City is going to be the side of that to really move their opinion, their offer that much, right? So it's I don't know. It's going to be fascinating how these two sides go about it, because I agree with you. Everything that they have said, it's like we want you to come back, Chris. You're our top priority, Chris. Please come back, Chris. It seems like everything they are doing to make that negotiation go as smoothly as possible. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing that it was last year. It was all about the zeros on the check that was being offered to him. It was all about the zeros in the contract. I don't know if that's changing. I think it's the same scenario as last year. So either he's got to decide that, okay, I'm going to have to surrender a little bit of money. And I think Nate Taylor talked about it on Only Weird Games a little bit, or no, I think he did it on 810 with CDOT, is he was kind of talking a little bit about how, hey, did they really go through all that last year to not maximize their money the following offseason? Like, how does that look in retrospect to go through that long of a holdout, then sign a contract probably less than what market value would be for you if you waited an extra 2 weeks to go to free agency? So I don't know. I don't know my read on the situation. I think there is a lot of stroking of egos going out publicly to Chris Jones saying how much you want him back. And I want to be very clear. I think they do want him back. I just think they are going well out in public and something that does not need to be public to say they want him back. The flip side of it is they've been very open to bring Sneed back into it about, hey, we want to tag him and consider letting him, or he can look for a trade once we do that. Guess what? That tag technically hasn't been placed yet. That tag still has not officially gone through. Now, there's no rush for it, right? They have until March 6th, I believe it is, to get that tag in, but we're going 24 hours now where it's been reported that the Chiefs are going to tag L'Jarius Sneed and he's allowed to go search for a trade partner. That tag hasn't been placed yet. There was also a report coming out today that the Chiefs were having their first real sit-down meetings with Sneed's people and Chris Jones' people today, or they were hoping to get them finished today. So it sounds like there's still some talks back and forth. There's still some negotiations for both players and the Chiefs right now. I don't know how the whole thing is going to play out. I'm a little curious because I think there's a lot of Chris Jones, we want you back, we want you back, we want you back. Whereas if that's the case, you just offer more money. You just give him more money and it doesn't ever hit the insiders on NFL Network or ESPN.
Yeah, I could see that too. And I mean, to your point about him, to Nate's point about why do you do that all last season if you're not maximizing? You mentioned, hey, when it's March 11th, he can sit there and negotiate with other teams. Let's not be naive. The Katz brothers have been shopping him for a while. They know what his market is. And the Chiefs know what his market is. They found out at the combine at the very worst. They found out this week, we can afford Chris Jones. It's within our budget. It's within this. Now, that doesn't mean that Chris doesn't want more, and he's right to ask for more, but I do look at that a little bit and I say they know. They know where the market is. So it may be that he wants to maximize his value. He wants to get that extra little bit. Maybe they took the temperature of the league and the league went, yeah, we're good at that $32 million or $33 million mark. And so we're willing to move on. I did want to bring this up. A super chat from Jack Richards here says, oh, and by the way, Mahomes specifically said he took a flexible contract so we can re-sign by name Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. Yes, he did say that. And yes, he said a lot of things over time. Some of them are him up there on the podium and everything like that. It is worth mentioning, though, you don't want to make Patrick Mahomes any angrier than you have to when you are making these business decisions. And while Patrick Mahomes does have some flexibility in his contract to move money around, to create cap space so that they can try and keep players, if they let L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones completely walk, like they're both gone, you tag and trade L'Jarius Sneed, can't come to an agreement with Chris Jones, he leaves in free agency. Let's say in that doomsday scenario there, where then I'm crying about how terrible the defense is again, and I'm just sad. If that happens, there are lots of ways they can make that up to Patrick Mahomes. So there are lots of ways that they can get him more targets. They can get him guys that he wants to play with. There are lots of sweeteners in that pot. So while he has said that, and while there is some focus around trying not to piss off the greatest player in the world, I think there are ways that they can smooth that over if they went, hey, listen, we offered them big money. They wanted bigger money. What do you want me to do, buddy? Here's some shiny new toys for you. So I don't think that that's going to be a backbreaking thing. So before we move off of this topic, before we go to break, Maddie, and do you have something before I ask this question? Go for it.
Well, so I was just going to say, we have a couple of super chats I did want to get to before we got to break as well. I just was chime in. Like, I think you're right. Like, yeah, Mahomes said that, his contract's flexible and he mentioned two guys by name, but also I watched Mahomes go through, a very dark place trying to throw the ball to the receivers that he had. So you want to tell him, like, yeah, you signed a flexible contract. We might lose one of these two guys that you specifically said you wanted to save some money for, but guess what? We might bring you someone to throw the ball to, so you're not having to scream at a referee in the middle of a week, 12 game or a 13 game against the Buffalo Bills, right? So they can still use that money on other players that I think would make him happy, but it is worth noting that he said that. We got this one, another one from Andrew here that said, are we sure the Cats Bros are aware of the market? Well, maybe not, right?
Listen, I hope for Chris Jones's sake that the Cats Bros are aware of the market. Yes.
Yeah. And we got one more, and this came back from when we were talking about L'Jarius Sneed. We had just moved on to Chris Jones. I was planning on circling back to this bumper. Is McDuffie going to stay in the slot, or is he going to guard wide receiver ones? I think he'd stay in the slot regardless, because I think that this is the tricky part with the whole L'Jarius Sneed situation. You listen to Steve Spagnuolo, and every first sentences out of his mouth about his defense is talking about McDuffie and Sneed together as a pair. Not one or the other, them two as a pair and what it allows them to do. So that's already tricky if you're losing Sneed. I don't think he would want to move McDuffie out of the slot and lose his best blitzer, at that point, especially without Sneed, his best cornerback defender versus the run, because of how they asked the slot corner to play the run. So I would imagine McDuffie would still play in the slot. He would be outside in base personnel. He'd kick into the slot like he does currently. You would see Watson and Williams, maybe Nazzie Johnson gets in the competition, or a new face comes in to compete for the two outside spots. And I love all those guys as a cornerback 3. I get a little worried when those are your boundary corners 1 and 2 on the field at the same time. So like, that is where my hesitation has always been about moving on from Sneed. You not only, I think, get worse significantly at cornerback 1, but you now can't help your cornerback 3 on the field at the same time, right? So I think there's a big trickle effect if you lose Sneed. I think you keep McDuffie where he is to at least keep one spot consistent and one spot as strong as possible.
I do also, and I made this comment in the DMs yesterday when a lot of this was going down. I think you guys even said it on the draft show. It's a good year to need a quarter. It is. This is an exceptional draft class. And if Steve Spagnuolo is looking at it and going, well, hey, I like a lot of guys in this class. I like the guys that I have here, and we feel confident in our ability to develop that. Well, then, yeah, maybe you feel a little more comfortable with that. All right, Manny, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I'm gonna have you guess. You got three options. Are the Chiefs going to keep L'Jarius Sneed and let Chris Jones walk, either on the franchise tag or a long-term deal? Are they going to tag and trade L'Jarius Sneed and sign Chris Jones to a long-term contract? Or are both of those players gone this offseason? Which one of those things do you think is most likely to happen?
Oh boy. Oh man. It's hard to say anything but tag and trading Sneed and keeping Chris Jones based on all of the information that we have heard this weekend. However, the combine, public facing stuff, I think Brett Veach has gotten a lot better about this. This is the beginning of your lying season. This is the beginning of where things aren't true. These are the beginning of where words that are said to you don't actually mean stuff. So I am going to stick with what my gut feeling was during the season, after the season, and everything leading up until quite literally yesterday. They're going to keep L'Jarius Sneed, and Chris Jones is going to hit free agency. I think the temptation of free agency and chasing Bosa and Donald's numbers in free agency, which I don't think the Chiefs are going to give him, I think that's going to be too enticing for him to not at least give it a shot. And I don't think the Chiefs will sit around and wait. Maybe that impacts what happens with L'Jarius Sneed. Maybe it doesn't. But I think Sneed, I'm going to stick to my gut. Sneed ends up on the Chiefs this upcoming year. Chris Jones tests free agency.
I think it's the second option. I think there's just too much here. Like
a lot of smoke.
How many guys do you hear, hey, go seek a trade, and then they stay that are quality players? Like not trying
Patriots.
to
The Patriots kind of got famous for that, though. That was their whole thing. Now, it wasn't always tag. It was go test your market in free agency, tell us what it is, and come back, and we'll tell you yes or no. So slightly different, right? Slightly different. Slightly. The Patriots were very famous for doing kind of that maneuver. What was it? Didn't they have somebody take a tour of the Jets facilities before just laughing and saying, "Oh no, I was always going back to the Patriots with your offer"? So the Patriots did stuff similar.
It could happen, but the Chiefs literally told Richie James to go seek a trade right before the trade deadline and went, okay, well, so you didn't have anybody, so stay in Kansas City. Good for him. He won a Super Bowl ring. He was active. So I don't know. I think it's the second option. I'm going to be incredibly sad about it, and I don't want to think about the static coverages that Steve Spagnuolo is going to have to go back to if L'Jarius Sneed is going. Oh, I just made Maddie sad. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more news from today. My goodness.
More.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
All right, we are back here at the KC Laboratory. Brent Shepard brings up a terrific point that Tyreek Hill was also allowed to seek a trade. Yeah, he was traded. He was absolutely traded. So, it's out there. So we'll see. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver. We're talking about the wide receiver room. A little bit of an overhaul. Chiefs went ahead and parted ways with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Before we move on to what that looks like for the rest of the wide receiver room, I'm so happy that he finished the season on the tear that he did. Think about it. We knew this cut was coming. Everybody in Chiefs Kingdom knew that this cut was coming a long time before last season even kicked off. He did not play particularly well in the regular season. This would have been one of those things that if he didn't play well in the postseason, everybody just would have been like, good, get gone. But the love that the outpouring, the show of, hey, you're always going to be a Chief, wear those rings really proud was awesome to see today. And rightfully so. He had a hell of a postseason. I'm not sure the Chiefs finished some of the games the way that they did without MVS for the second year in a row. So hat tip to that dude. Wear those two rings proud. But, Chiefs are moving on from him, Maddie.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm glad that MVS was able to have kind of the run he did through the playoffs. I know that some people are going to look back and only see the negatives throughout the year, but like it's going to be really hard to ever think back on the season and care about any drops or any bad plays that might have happened, because once the playoffs rolled around, once it became do or die, like he was the receiver making the biggest plays. Rashee Rice better in the playoffs, but MVS was the guy making the plays when it mattered consistently. And so it's just, that's awesome. And then you can even go back to the year before where he was a lot better. Like, I mean, last year, his entire season was a lot better, but still you think back to the AFC Championship game, phenomenal.
Man.
Keeps them in the game. People barely remember that he had a very ho-hum to bad Super Bowl because he was so good in the game before that. And that's all that's going to matter. Because like, that's what he was there for. He was there to have these big games when it was available. He was there to make some of these kind of, I don't want to say clutch plays, but these big plays in big moments. So I'm glad he went out on that note. I am glad he is still hitting free agency at an age where there should be some suitors. I obviously don't think MVS, given how the past couple of years have gone, is going to get a lot of money, but there should still be some suitors given, he's now a proven winner. He's played with two excellent quarterbacks. Some team are going to see him as a veteran to get in the room, especially at the age he is at. And he gets to go out with another ring, and the Chiefs get to save $12 million in cap space. Yeah. So everybody kind of wins from this scenario. Like everybody comes out of this a winner. The fans, MVS, and the Chiefs all going to be out on top.
Yeah, absolutely the case. He's going to land on his feet. Somebody will sign him. He's not going to make a ton of money, probably. I mean, hell, I hope he does. Good for him if he does. But, I don't think that he's going to go in a room that needs a vet. Like, that's what it is. And the Chiefs needed a vet in that room this past year. He was valuable from that regard. But looking at the rest of this wide receiver room now, you've got Kadarius Toney. We'll see what happens with him, but healthy scratch throughout the playoffs after some off-field stuff just doesn't scream a guy that's probably coming back to this team. We'll see. Mecole Hardman is a free agent right now. Mecole Hardman, who this week has also had a very big week. First of all, awesome for Mecole that he gets this Super Bowl glow up. Like, he's everywhere, man. Like, he should be. Like, that's awesome for him. But
public enemy number one in New York right now.
Yeah, it says on a podcast that he told Brett Veach and Patrick Mahomes to come get him before the trade. That was what he said verbatim on the podcast. He comes back and says, no, that's not what I said, not what I meant. Personally, and I don't know, we'll find out more details. Personally, this just screams like the Earl Thomas thing to the Cowboys where, after the Jets-Chiefs game, McColl's on the field, because he talked about how miserable he was before that Chiefs game and he would not go in there to return punts. He hated the special teams coach, all this other stuff. It makes all the sense in the world after the game to stand there talking to Brett Veach and Patrick Mahomes and going, please come get me. Please come get me. If the NFL is going to start cracking down on that, then they're going to have a hard time. You can't police that stuff. That happens all the time. Guys stand around, talk about their future, talk about the fact that they're going to be a free agent, talk about all this stuff. So I don't think that anything's going to come from this, but the New York Jets are very upset right now, Maddie. Before we move on to the rest of the room, do you have any thoughts on that?
Okay, so I don't think there's going to be any tampering stuff there. Like you said, nothing that has been said, unless there are some kind of, phone records that are going to get pulled, which obviously that changes things, a la, Jeremy Maclin situation. If for all we know, this was said on the field, and like, you can't really do anything about that. That's not tampering. That's nothing, right? So it's just, it is what it is. Maybe Mecole Hardman does send out a message that says, hey, you guys can come get me. That's not tampering if there is not information passed. Like if it's not a conversation from Brett Veach to Mecole Hardman, like, right. Brett Veach has to respond in some way to that, has to be part of that. It can't just be, he got a text from a player that happens to have his phone number because, they once were in contact because they worked with each other. So I don't think I had any concerns about that. Mecole Hardman was going off on the Pivot podcast. He was putting the Jets in the dirt quite a bit, especially the offense. The Jets have taken exception. The special teams coach out there took the brunt of it, actually. And so, yeah, there's some Twitter stuff going on. I think Mecole also came across as very mature in the way he's approaching football now. He's no longer talking. He's very specifically said, I'm not a wide receiver 1. I'm not even saying I need to be a wide receiver 2 or 3. I just want a role. I want a chance to have a role, be part of the rotation, go out there and help a team. Great outlook. awesome. You want to come in and be a wide receiver 4 or 5 for the Chiefs anytime, please come on down, right? That's kind of where he's at. And he seems to have very much accepted that as his role. So I thought that was great. I think you also see a little bit of the McColl immaturity with the way he handled the special team situation, which had issues on all sides. So like, I also can see how he's going to rub other teams the wrong way. So I don't know. I'm glad McColl had a good run in the playoffs. It's entertaining to watch the backlash right now, but there's definitely some ups and downs coming the rest of the offseason for him.
For sure. Absolutely, for sure. But to your point, and I'm glad that you said all that stuff about him saying, "Oh, I'm fine. I just want to roll." It seems like a guy that could be in Kansas City, like for not very much. Like it just kind of feels like, hey, I went out and I went, okay, well, I'll go over here and I'm going to play with this guy and this is going to be great. No, hell, I'm on Hard Knocks and I get a little bit of camera time. This is going to be awesome. And oh, the grass isn't greener. This sucks. I don't want to be with this organization anymore. Who knows if that changes with Aaron Rodgers out there, but this was starting in training camp. This was not something that was, after Aaron's injury and all that. So I think that McColl would like to be here. But to that point, a lot of everything that's being spoken about there, Brett Veach, Andy Reid, the national media, there's a lot of connection to the Chiefs would like to get Mahomes some wide receivers. They have spoken about how we want to get this guy, Patrick Mahomes, better targets than we had last year. And again, the S part of that is what I keep heading out. Everybody keeps talking about wide receivers, targets. And this is not something that's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we're going to get, wide receiver 4 through 6, and we're going to feel good about it. They're not going into next year the way that they went into this year. They played with fire. It almost cost them some games. They win the Super Bowl. Yay, great. I think it's funny to see that, some other NFL franchises are looking at that and going, well, we're wondering how important receivers actually are after watching the Chiefs play last year. And meanwhile, the Chiefs are going to go the completely opposite direction. They're going, no, we're never doing that again. So I think that not only is there an overhaul in this room, Maddie, based on what we're hearing coming out of the combine, I think it's a major one. Like this might be a big free agent and an early-ish pick. Like we've talked about combos that we like, but this seems like one that is just like, yeah, they're definitely going to make a significant investment in this room.
Yeah. And so the big thing that really stuck out to me, it is in a sit-down interview with for CBS with Jonathan Jones. And I think it was 2 days ago from Brett Veach. And he sits down with him. And it's a clip on Jonathan Jones' Twitter page is where I found it. I don't know when it aired on CBS, right? But you can find it, JJones9 on Twitter, on X, whatever you like to still call it. Brett Veach sits down with them and they just talk about the process this year that led to them with these wide receiver weapons. Now, at no point in time does Brett Veach say, hey, we had guys we thought were going to step up and they didn't. I think we all accept that there was hope that Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney would play bigger roles, and that didn't happen. Brett Veach doesn't say that, but he does say that last year in the draft, in free agency, they wanted to get better at the position. They didn't for the free agency. They quote unquote did not have the resources. Now, if we remember how last year's free agency period went, they were a little preoccupied with where their money might be going, might not be going, holding out everything going on with the Chris Jones situation and some of their own decisions. They paid Jawan Taylor. They paid guys already. So they didn't have the money left pre-draft last year to get a wide receiver. Brett Veach directly alludes to that. Then for the draft, he said they aggressively, not just tried to get up, they aggressively tried to get up to get a wide receiver, Zay Flowers. Didn't happen. They couldn't find a suitor. Again, Zay Flowers, they didn't have a suitor. He doesn't say the player's name, but they tried to get up. They couldn't find a trade. He said, okay, we came out of the first round of the draft, but then we stayed aggressive in the second round. We traded up and got Rashee Rice. It obviously worked out. But he just talked about their process of how they wanted to add guys. They aggressively went after the wide receiver position. In the year, it still didn't turn out the way they wanted to. Then he talks about how this year, you got to have a plan. You got to go back through it, yada, yada, yada. But I think what you take away from it is what money and capital they had to play with last year was not allowing them to get any wide receiver help. I don't get the sense that is going to be something they're going to let stop them this year.
No.
Chris Jones might be priority 1. It seems like wide receiver is probably very close to a priority number 2 for this team right now. And they have
possibly 3 and 4. It might be
Yeah. And I also said this is lying season, so you can't believe a word they say. This is also true, right? A lot of this could be just a bunch of a hearsay. I just think the way he talks about the resources, the way we've heard about them trying to trade up last year and not finding suitors, I really do think they tried to fix the wide receiver room last year the best they could and were very limited in the options they had. This year, they're already thinking about that being a big deal while they do have more resources. They will have more money to play with this year. They not necessarily have more draft picks, but when you have an extra money, you now are picking, still the same spot of a draft, but a little bit better draft potentially to find a wide receiver. It seems like they are going to emphasize getting some pass catchers for Patrick Mahomes this year from everything we have heard.
Yeah. And I mean, that shouldn't surprise anybody. I think again, the plural part of that is the part that really interests me about all of this, because again, we want to add targets for Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, that's fine. As an offhanded comment. And then everybody talking about adding wide receivers, not like, hey, they're going to try and round out the bottom. As I said, wide receivers. It might be bigger than maybe we expected of a move than when we were talking about this a couple weeks ago. Now, the other piece of news that came out today, NFLPA released their report card of all of these teams. This is, players within the NFL vote on a number of different categories. And, it could be about the facilities, the diet, nutrition, the food that they've got, the training that they get, all of these things are kind of factored in, and they break them down one by one. And the Chiefs, once again, are near the bottom in almost every category, except for Andy Reid, who gets an A+ in the first overall, which is awesome. I'm very glad that they're doing that this year. Our guy Duncan Idaho over here says, it sounds like the Chiefs gym is a jump rope and cement blocks. It kind of does. It really does. Players hate the Chiefs facilities, and worse, potentially the biggest thing that I think that everybody hung on, players really dislike Clark Hunt, Maddie.
Yeah, I'm going to save the Clark Hunt for I think the end, because that was a new addition of the report card this year. Hey, last year's report card for the Chiefs wasn't a whole lot better.
Not good.
They got ragged on last year, and this was actually a big part of why they got more negative grades. They said, "Oh, we got beat down last year. We're going to make changes. We're going to make things better. Have a folding chair for your locker."
Oh, no.
Have a chair. So it's just that it doesn't seem like the Chiefs. It seems like, I think a big part is the Chiefs as an organization didn't take the feedback that came from this. And obviously the feedback from this is not the only thing that matters, right? Players have every ability to talk to their agents or directly to the team. However, it just seems like maybe the Chiefs didn't take some of the stuff that came out that seriously. And if you're going to have something this big that caught on as much as the NFL, like PA's report card did last year, and then all this is going to come out and you're just going to brush it aside like it doesn't matter. Like you're going to brush it aside that the team, that the players don't care that your training staff stinks, that your facilities stink, that your food stinks, that your travel plan stinks, that they hate having to bunk with a teammate. Like all these things, they're going to dislike all that. And you're not really going to make any changes besides bringing a couple chairs instead of bar stools for a locker. Like I get how it could get worse from year one to year two, because it sounds like it's all the same issues that they already had. And like that part I can see as a player being extremely frustrating.
Yes. And I saw some people kind of looking at this and going, but they updated the locker room. Like they did that last year. Why is this happening? It's the practice facility that the players are talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know the last time that it was updated, but I've heard reports that it's been 20 years. And so that's a long time. There's been a lot of progressions that, have occurred in sports medicine, sports science, and all this stuff. They're making plenty of money. The Chiefs are consistently in the Super Bowl. They're always getting the AFC Championship game. There's all this money that's flowing in right now. And so these players are sitting there looking around and going, why are we sitting in places, especially some of these guys that played, like Trey Smith at Tennessee, in these SEC locker rooms, is probably sitting in the Chiefs practice facility locker room and going, yeah, this is a lot worse than what I was in college because it is. And so, like, Garrett Dieter has even put this on Twitter is like, the facility is definitely outdated. It has everything you quote unquote need for the most part. I'd like to see it upgraded, though. The players deserve it. And
They're
part
just
of
building
why
character and grit.
what did you say? Apparently, the way to build a winning culture is to have terrible facilities. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I
I
like
tweeted
that
that out, and I think people are taking it. Some people might be taking it as in like I'm trying to take a shot at the Chiefs with that. Like, no, I just think it's funny that the Chiefs are having all this success while dealing with the worst everything besides head coach, according to this study. I just think it's funny. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess, and everybody will acknowledge the Chiefs have a winning culture. I thought it was hilarious to have the contrast of McColl saying, well, the Chiefs have this perfect, amazing winning culture. And then, like, the very next day, this report card comes out and says everything about them sucks. I just thought that was pretty funny. Winning culture, but everything sucks. I thought that was fun.
And the part of the reason why Clark Hunt gets such a low grade, this is coming from J.C. Treader, the president of the NFLPA, who looks
Clark
at these
Hunt
results.
got dunked on. First year for Clark Hunt, first year
Correct.
for the owners and head coach, right? And so Andy's
Yes.
first, Clark Hunt's dead last. Okay.
32nd. And the reason was because, according to J.C. Treader and according to the results from this survey, Clark Hunt and the organization told the players, yes, we are going to upgrade that practice facility. It is long overdue. We need to make it happen. And when they showed up at the facility, all that was there were new chairs. And that was it. That was the only thing that had changed. And they were told by the organization, we didn't have time to do this because y'all keep winning Super Bowls. And we don't have enough time to renovate when you keep winning Super Bowls. What a load of crap that is. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, we're to the point that the Chiefs have been in the AFC Championship game every year with Mahomes as the starter. Clark Hunt, the year before, is just like, okay, you know what? I think we need 2 weeks to make this happen. And these jerks over here keep winning Super Bowls. And so now we don't have time to do it. That's why the players are pissed. That's why they gave him such low grades, because he broke that promise to them. And they look at that amongst other things, contractual things, things like that. And that makes them go, hey, man, like, help us out. Like, you know, you're benefiting from all of this. You're getting all this revenue. We're raising the profile of your team. Least you can do is throw us a bone and make the practice facility a little bit better. And then when you promise it, you don't deliver. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, so there's a couple things like I think at play here. The breaking of a promise is one, but if you read through the notes of the NFLPA report card, a lot of it is they don't feel like there's enough training staff. They don't feel like there's enough like strength coach staff members. They don't feel like money is being spent on things that would make things easier or better or more convenient for them. In every player's mind, I almost guarantee that goes back to, well, that's the owner. The owner is in control of who signs or hires those people. And maybe that's true. I am not saying I know who's in charge of that, right? But like, that's what works in their mind. So they feel like they're understaffed in all these other ways that help them play football. They're not getting the support from the personnel, from updated equipment, from a comfort level, from a facility level they think they need. So it's unfair that they're like, well, our locker room stinks, so we're going to vote that bad, but we're also going to punish the owner because the locker room stinks because we think he's in charge of it. Again, I'm not saying Clark is or isn't in charge of why that has or hasn't happened. It's just, I think he's catching the roll down, you know, it all rolls downhill. He's the guy there at the bottom kind of holding it up because he's the owner of the team. So I get that. I also get the frustration. Now, I might be speaking entirely out of pocket here. I don't know how this goes. This man is like the 4th richest owner in the NFL. And you have all of these people saying you have bad facilities. It stinks. This is bad. You would think that maybe he could do something over the past. Let's even just limit it to, let's say, 6 years since they've been the best team in the NFL, making more money from all these other things besides every team but Dallas, probably. You think that maybe some of that would make its way back in the team. And you can say, well, he's spending all of his money on that really good roster. No, not really. They're also not spending cash. Yeah. They're not really spending that much cash year by year. They're pretty much middle of the NFL every year. So like, it's just, it definitely can come across, if you look at it on the outside, as Clark Hunt is a guy that is trying to pinch pennies a little bit. And I think that's rolling down to players, and it's probably upset them. And it has probably led some players to voting negatively or grading negatively on this report card. And the funniest thing to me too, travel, bad stuff. And one of the biggest notes is they have to bunk with other people. Food stuff, I'm sure having to go to St. Joe, I'm sure a lot of players don't love that for training camp. You know who's not in control of those things? You know who's not in control of any of those things I just said? Clark Hunt.
Yeah.
You know who is? The guy that finished number 1 on the head coach voting, Andy Reid. So I also don't know if there's a great understanding of who controls everything that they don't like and where the blame gets placed.
I mean, that's one of the, like, we talk about it all the time where the buck stops with Andy and all that. Everybody loves Andy. Andy gets to sit there and go, you know what? You should get paid the most of anybody in the league. You are absolutely right. And then the door's shut and he's sitting in that room with everybody else going, yeah, we can't be paying that guy that. Like, I mean, you know, he's everybody's favorite person in that building. I get it. I do love how that all works. Andy's also in charge of the training staff as well. Like he has a lot of say in that, who also got a bunch of negative grades.
Maybe he gets a budget. I don't know. Like, again, I don't know how it all works. Andy Reid's definitely in control of some of the stuff the players negatively didn't like. And I think that's kind of funny.
Correct. And I mean, again, this is one data point. I just thought it was funny that comes out today and everybody's windmill dunking on Clark because of the facilities there on the same week that, you know, we're talking about, oh, are they going to pay Chris Jones X amount of money? You know, like
just the same day they're announcing stadium renovations.
Same day they're announcing stadium renovations where he's paying some of it, but not all of it. And then also the same week that he turns around and pays a whole bunch of assistant coaches a whole bunch of money, which there's not a cap. And that brings us to our last point for the day here. We talked a little bit about Dave Merritt, Chiefs defensive backs coach, how important he is to this organization. I theorized that, you know, since they were taking care of all these defensive coaches in the building and Dave Merritt started at the same time, so he's probably got a contract that ends at the same time. I'm looking at all this going, okay, well, they probably took care of Dave Merritt, so it's just a matter of time before that all comes out. Comes out today. Report out there. He is meeting with the San Francisco 49ers about their open defensive coordinator job. And boy, my heart stopped more than hearing that L'Jarius Sneed might get traded. I really don't want Dave Merritt to leave. We give Brett Veach all this credit for identifying these day 3 corners and, you know, finding these traits, finding these guys that can contribute at an NFL level and how awesome it is. And almost all of that credit goes to Brett Veach. You know who doesn't get nearly enough of it? Dave Merritt. He's the guy that is molding and shaping these guys. He's the guy that gets all of these rookies on the field and prepared to go against number 1 wide receivers every single week. This is one that I was afraid we'd see this offseason, and every defensive coordinator job that closed up shop made me happy because it meant that guys like Joe Cullen or Dave Merritt weren't leaving this organization. Now, all of a sudden, he is going to San Francisco to interview, again, just interview with them for their open defensive coordinator job. Hey, Clark, you want to do a little goodwill? Turn around and give that man the bag, please, so he doesn't leave Kansas City.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think I'd said this. The Merritt San Francisco marriage in itself, like just speaking from that, is weird. That's an odd one to me because Kyle wants all of his defensive coordinators that he has liked have been defensive line or pass rush oriented guys that have married the coverage to the pass rush to protect it and have all come from a specific school. They branched out last year with Steve Wilkes, who was more of a coverage guy, a DB's coach, and he got fired because he didn't do a good job of letting the pass rush do what the pass rush has done over the past 4 or 5 years for Kyle Shanahan. So to bring in Dave Merritt, also a secondaries coach, to come in to be a first-year defensive coordinator for Kyle Shanahan, who's already very controlling and wants to get his fingers in everything. Don't know if I love the move or the fit. Oh, by the way, Dave Merritt, DB coach under Steve Wilkes as the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. So it's an odd fit to me if they go that route. I don't know if I love that for Dave Merritt. I think he's going to be a good DC. I just don't know if I love the fit there with Kyle Shanahan looming over him. Okay, that out of the way. Yeah, it would suck to lose him. It would be really bad. I think, boy, would I be real nervous if the Chiefs tagged and traded L'Jarius Sneed, then lost Dave Merritt, had to hire a new DB coach because I don't believe they have the next like 10-year guy for defensive backs is Donald D'Alessio in his 3rd or 4th year on the team coming up from college. You want to lose Sneed and Merritt, and so now you're having D'Alessio or somebody else you hire coach up rookies, Najee Johnson or Jalen Watson or Joshua Williams to be starters now. Like, you have to almost assume there's going to be a small regression in your cornerback play and your secondary play as a whole if you lose Merritt. And now you're going to take away one of the best 2 players in that secondary and have to get better play out of everyone else. That's a scary proposition to me if they lose their DB coach, a very, very good DB coach, and L'Jarius Sneed in one offseason and have to try to come back from both at the same time. Whew, that's bad.
Yeah, that's rough. Now, to be fair here, if Dave Merritt wants a defensive coordinator job, like, he should absolutely 1000% take this job. Like, period. Yes. He should, because he is, Steve Spagnuolo just
got to get away from Kyle. I don't know. Kyle scares me.
And Kyle does scare me a little bit, but
I think you get fired in a year. Like, you're very high risk of being fired in 1 year.
Yeah, you could. You absolutely could, but at least you would get a chance to prove yourself as a defensive coordinator. If you're in Kansas City, Steve Spagnuolo just got re-upped. He's not going anywhere. Steve Spagnuolo got poached for a head coaching job, which he should be getting interviews. We've been over this before, but likely not getting a gig. If he did, are we sure that Dave Merritt's the guy that's next in line? Are we sure it's not Joe Cullen? Because if it's Joe Cullen, then all of a sudden Dave Merritt is stuck behind another guy again. So it's very difficult to look at this from Dave Merritt's perspective and not go, I need to take this opportunity when I have it. Now, you could make the case staying for another year, proving, basically taking Trent McDuffie even further up into the echelons of NFL cornerbacks, developing some new ones. If L'Jarius Sneed moves on and this secondary continues to hum the way that it does, Dave Merritt should be getting defensive coordinator offers, lined up at his door. Like that. I think this is the first year that teams are really taking notice of the fact that, oh, these guys aren't just kind of good. They're really good. So maybe he waits another year, get a little bit of interview experience here. But I just saw this one and I got scared because I can see if he really wants a defensive coordinator job, looking at the 49ers roster and saying, boy, it would be really cool to be able to coach Nick Bosa and that defensive line. It would be really cool to have a Fred Warner that I get to coach. Like, there's a lot of positives there. He's already familiar with Charvarius Ward. So that, he's already speaking that language. There's enough pieces there that I could see him, even despite all the Kyle stuff and the fact that you might get held liable and immediately fired after 1 year. I could see him convincing himself that there's enough pieces to make this a really good defense, and I may not get another shot in the near future.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. Like, there's only 32 NFL defensive coordinator jobs, right? And you look at the players on the 49ers, it's a very enticing job. So, like, I'm not entirely, like, shocked if he gets offered the job, he takes it. I'm just sitting here on the outside being like, I see what Ben Johnson's doing for the Detroit Lions and now it's a head coaching job. He's already a coordinator, right? Like, it's a next level up already, but I'm sitting here watching him be very selective because he knows as long as he keeps producing it the way he is right now, jobs are going to keep coming to him. I just wonder if there won't be a better fit for Merritt as a defensive coordinator, but I'm also not the guy getting offered the job. I'm not the guy getting to go coach Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and those stud players. So it would be hard to say no. I don't know if I love the fit. Is this ultimately where I land on it? He did say, though, that he said publicly that he wanted to get his kids to graduate school before he was ready to really not take on, but like go chasing a defensive coordinator job. He said that, I believe, earlier this year in a press conference. Jordan Foote pulled it on Twitter. You can find the direct quote from him out there. And so that's out there that's what he said. That was, again, before the contract's offered. That's before the money is on the table, if there is a contract that gets offered. But that is at least where his mind was at some point in time. I do know Andy's a big proponent of telling coaches, his friends, go get the interview experience when it comes around. You don't ever have to take a job, but go get the interview experience. So maybe that's also a little bit at what's at play. We have to sit back, find out soon. Did have one little last thing on this, though. If Merritt is hired away, somebody that's now available, to be a DB coach? Sam Madison is not returning to the Miami Dolphins.
Right, boy.
He is not.
That
Sam
makes so
Madison.
much sense for Spags, like a direct
Yup.
replace. Just get in there and go.
He was an assistant DB coach with the Chiefs in 2020 and 2021.
Right.
Maybe 2019 even. I can't remember now, but he was an assistant DB
It was
coach.
2019 as well, I believe. Yeah, I think he was there for 3 years, but yeah.
Plenty of experience. Andy Reid gave him permission essentially to break his contract and make a lateral move to the Miami Dolphins. There was no ill will about it. That's where he played football. He wanted to be there. They talked about it. Andy Reid said only positive things about it, but he was given permission to make a lateral move and get out of his contract with the Chiefs to do so. I just wonder if he would be available if the Chiefs had an opening, if there would be a reunion on the horizon there.
Boy, that makes a lot of sense. That would help with some of the consistency elements that I would be worried about there. That would help with some of the potential issues. They've replaced a lot of the guys that Sam Madison has worked with. So it's not like he's coming in. It's like, hey, I've got this working relationship with all these dudes. But that being said, you still feel pretty comfortable with his relationship with Spags and, knowing what Spags wants to do, knowing the Spags playbook. That's why we were so sad when Sam Madison left. We were like, oh, crap, what's going to happen? Oh, okay, well, Dave Merritt, our safeties coach, is going to be our corners coach. And boy, they got good in a hurry under Dave Merritt. So, I mean, so that would be one that would make me feel a little bit better about the transition there. But boy, they've been good under Dave Merritt. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. Big day of news here for the Chiefs and here on KC Sports Network. We just ran down the biggest things that came out from today. There will be more as the combine continues. We will be back next Monday with the KC Laboratory. It will be me, it will be Maddie, and it will be Kent. So for Maddie Lane, I'm Craig Stout. This is the KC Laboratory. Be kind to each other, and we will catch you later.
If Merritt leaves, I'll be sad.